are glad to have your company tonight, coming to you from the city of Kigali. My name is Martina Abera. Now, on Thursday afternoon at Village Urugwiro, President Paul Kagame received Sir Kipunde, outgoing World Bank country manager for Rwanda, for a farewell meeting. They discussed Rwanda's long-standing partnership with the World Bank and continued collaboration in support of the country's development priorities. President Paul Kagame also met with Julie Crowley, outgoing High Commissioner of Canada to Rwanda, for a farewell audience as she concludes her tour of duty. Their discussion reflected on Rwanda-Canada relations and the continued strengthening of bilateral cooperation in areas of mutual interest. Rwanda's central bank is tightening monetary policy as inflation remains well above its target. The key policy rate now stands at 8.75% after inflation reached 13% in the second quarter. William Evans Mutabazi spoke exclusively to BNR Governor Soraya Hakuziyaremye about the impact of the rate hike and what it means for house IDs and businesses. Let's take a look.
Honorable Governor, welcome to RwandaTV News. Pleasure having you. You began the year as a central bank from what would say a defensive approach, where you've been tightening the central bank rate, increasing it from 50 to 100 to now 50. In terms of effectiveness, how much has the defensiveness worked?
Thank you. It's a great question, but I will maybe reframe it differently. We didn't start with the defensive measures. We are absolutely taking policy decisions that in line with our mandate, which is price stability. You might recall that by November, we were already seeing pressures on inflation, which could be explained especially as government revisited many administered prices. We remember electricity tariffs in October, health tariffs, which had not been reviewed and adjusted for a number of years. And we were expecting that, of course, that adjustment that was needed, given the services being given, would put pressure on core inflation. Second, one of the risks to our projections, because we could see that headline inflation was approaching 8%. By November, we decided to increase slightly our central bank rate by 25 basis points because we wanted to already mitigate the effects of those pressures we were seeing. By the time we had our Monetary Policy Committee meeting of February, they had already materialized also risks on a modest agriculture production from season A, which put pressure on food prices. So as a central bank, as a monetary policy committee, seeing those numbers, because all our policies are data-driven, we had to take a tightening stance, or monetary policy tightening stance, to make sure that we would not have inflation below 8% for long during 2026. And so when we saw that from the first quarter, inflation was already above 8% at 9%, now for the second quarter, again at 13%, taking a tightening monetary policy was the right thing to do to make sure that we don't move into 2027 with double-digit inflation. And so the actions we are taking is really protecting purchasing power of Rwandans, because without price stability, we would start seeing even impact on our economic growth. It hasn't happened yet, but we cannot have a prolonged high inflation without taking action. Of course, we are cognizant that the monetary policy tools alone in our context are not sufficient. And so the fact that government has also taken fiscal measures as well as trade measures, negotiating agreements for the supply of fuel at relatively affordable prices with the government of Oman those are measures in the right direction to reduce the burden on energy inflation and overall bring back inflation towards the 2 to 8% target range. And so we can start seeing already in the numbers that from the second half of 2027, we'll have brought back inflation, but that needs tightening of monetary policy in addition to the fiscal measures that are being taken.
You're sort of fighting inflation, which is a shifting enemy or target, right? So as the target shifts, you also shift. How do Rwandans now respond to sort of safeguard, but also give your mechanism or the approach to sort of materialize in terms of effectiveness?
That's a great question. It's true that we are navigating very complex economic context. And if we look at all the crises that the world has had since the COVID in 2020 up to now, it's not the first time we're navigating such, I would say, environment of high inflation. And that's why we're continuing on that coordination between fiscal policy and monetary policy, tightening monetary policy the same way we did in 2020 to 2023, up to a level where we say it's appropriate to now bring back inflation towards the 2 to 8%. The continuous monitoring of recent economic developments, inflation developments globally in the region and in Rwanda. That is why we also emphasize on making sure that appropriate measures are taken to increase productivity in agriculture, productivity in the industry sector and manufacturing, to make sure that we can contain any food price increase that would be, due to a weak agricultural performance, and be able to manage also energy prices. Unfortunately, we're not producers of oil, so we are dependent on international global prices. But the ones that are in our control, food prices mainly, or prices of manufactured products in Rwanda, although some of the components come from outside, are something that we are also monitoring and making sure we provide the right analysis and advice to make sure that they do not amplify the high inflation pressures we're seeing now.
From where you sit in your final parting shots, what sort of message do you give to households, businesses? What should this figure mean to them? Of course, still in practical terms. What do you say to households first, but also the key message that everyone, if they miss the number or the interpretation of the number and what it means, they should take that message home?
The key takeaway is that high inflation is never good to any economy. And when we say economy, it's not abstract. We feel it as citizens, as households, when we go to the markets. Food prices have increased, energy prices have increased, and day-to-day cost of living has increased. So in a time like this, what's important for households is to prioritize expenses, to prioritize projects, activities where they want applying for loans, to make sure they are more productive, and you put on hold, I would say, consumption loans, waiting for one more accommodative monetary policy that would ultimately bring down lending rates, but also make sure that we come back to a less volatile environment, which is never the best environment to take, I would say, huge investments, and making sure that we are also developing a culture of savings to weather the storm, because now we've seen that crises are becoming more frequent and more intense. And in that, I would say, in that regard, the central bank is playing its part on the monetary policy side, but also making sure that we are very, very committed to financial education, to make sure that our population understands finance, economy, what's the impact on them, and how they manage their personal finances in a better way. We also work, and you've seen that we've started strategic dialogues with the private sector to make sure that they understand better what our role is, but also how the financial sector can better support them in their projects. And they were able to share with us also constraints they're seeing in access to funding, and also more appetite for capital markets instruments that complement the banking. And so that should give confidence that in spite of those challenges, the financial sector is still stable and able to support economic activities for households, for businesses. We just need to sort of shift towards more capital markets-led financing. And secondly, the more financial literacy we have as a population, the more savings we can have as a country, will allow us to become more resilient as an economy, because these shocks, we don't have control over them, and as it stands, being on climate-related risk, geopolitical risk, they're only increasing. So building that resilience, it starts from individual places, households, businesses, to build a resilient economy. But the numbers show that our economy is actually resilient, growing at 10% in a quarter where you have global uncertainties. I don't think it's something that we should take for granted. What we need to sustain it by building a macroeconomic stability.
Governor, if I'm getting you right, you're saying households should not borrow for luxury, right?
Not in a time where you have high inflation. It's the wisest thing to do.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Analysts of governance across the African continent say governance is also among the factors hindering Africa's journey towards self-reliance and integration. This is reflected in the high cost of air travel connecting African countries, which, if reduced, could contribute to greater integration and increased trade across the continent. Adam Squizera with more.
The pursuit of African unity, dignity and self-reliance are among the core principles underpinning the Pan-Africanist movement, whose objective is to unite Africa as one continent with common goals and a shared vision aimed at improving the lives of its people. Some Africans say there are still gaps stemming from governance systems that do not sufficiently support the implementation of this vision.
I think our African leaders are not listening enough to young people. Young people are already connecting. Despite the barriers and the challenges, young people in Africa are already connecting.
Young people are asking to be invited to the table where these decisions that affect us are being made. For instance, over the next 30 years, I will still not be 50. So those decisions, they really matter to me. So what will I do? The first thing is I'm going to make sure that I understand the landscape of what I'm trying to change. Right? Because when you are invited to the table as a young person, you need to be able to have very practical solutions to bring to the table that makes it very, very important that you are there. And then I think something else would be that, is there a world where young Africans are invited to sit at important policy discussions?
The CEO of Rwanda, Yvonne Makolo, also says one of the challenges among African countries is the high cost of travel, particularly air transport.
Still a big challenge. Operating within the African continent as an airline is a huge, huge challenge. And that's always the first question anybody asks me when they find out I work at Rwanda is, why are your tickets so expensive? That's standard, everybody. So that's where we start to see all the barriers that make connecting the continent so difficult. Whether it's the fuel prices, which are 20 to 40% higher than in other areas in the world, the high airport taxes, all the charges that are lumped on before we even put our base fare. So before you even put the Rwanda fare, we have between 100 and, if you move to Central Africa, 200, 300 in West Africa already on the ticket. So that's before you put the overflight, the ground handling charges, all the charges that start adding up, and that's why you can't get a $200 flight between Kigali and Johannesburg.
Governance and economic expert Shaka Michael Nyarwaya says this gap can be addressed through governance that embraces a genuine Pan-African vision.
Third, identity. The Africans, they don't believe in their identity. So we need to be strong and be serious about our identity. It's very, very, very critical. So we believe that I can be a Rwandan, but again, I can be an American, or maybe a British, or maybe a British. You know, people are fighting to get a citizen, the second citizenship. But if we really love our country and we love our continent, and everyone said that I'm going to be serious about my country, our continent will grow.
President Paul Kagame says Africa's mindset should go hand in hand with the way countries on the continent are governed.
We have to change our continent, but we can't change our continent without changing our behavior, our way of doing things, our attitudes. We certainly have to, and we can't keep saying things about what we have to do, and then start doing different things. We have to match what we say, what we want, with what we do, and then be able to see the results. And there are no two ways about it. We can't keep running around in circles and sometimes congratulating ourselves, sometimes hugging each other, and then doing this. But after a year, or 3 years, or 5 years, when we look back, we find we are either in the same place where we were, or even, moved backwards.
Rwanda says it has made progress in embracing the principles of self-reliance and promoting governance that puts Pan-Africanism at the forefront and delivers tangible benefits to citizens. As part of Africa's key objectives under Agenda 2063, Adams Kwizera, RwandaTV News.
The 547 families living around the Volcanoes National Park in Musanze district are welcoming the government's initiative to construct an environmentally friendly model settlement where they will be relocated as part of efforts to expand the park and provide it with more space to thrive. The project will be implemented in 2 phases and is expected to cost more than $259 billion. At the launch of the environmentally friendly model village project, a master plan was presented showing how the modern village will be developed on a 50-hectare site. It will accommodate residents relocated from the boundaries of Volcanoes National Park as part of efforts to expand the park and increase its space. Residents of Kinigi sector welcomed the project, saying it will help them have better living conditions. The model village will include residential houses, modern health center, a nursery school and a secondary school, a child care center, an area dedicated to technology-based agriculture, a livestock farming area, and a hotel that will accommodate tourists, among other infrastructure. Northern Province Governor Mugabo Wagahunde Maurice said that before construction began, activities were carried out to prepare the residents and assess their property. The expansion of the Volcanoes National Park is expected to reduce disputes by 80%, particularly those caused by crop damage, by wildlife, and environmental degradation. The Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Development Board, Jean-Guy Africa, said the expansion will cover 37.4 square kilometers, increasing the park size by 23% and providing it with more space. He said this will help promote tourism and improve the livelihoods of communities living around the park.
I would like to sincerely thank our partners for the invaluable support that they have provided us in bringing us to this important milestone. In particular, I would like to recognize the World Bank, the Africa Wildlife Foundation, local NGOs such as Conservation Heritage, Sakula, CCDN, and the many others that will help bring this project to fruition. Your continued partnership demonstrates the power of working together to deliver environmental solutions that are sustainable, inclusive, and capable of transforming local economies and improving livelihoods.
Construction of the environmentally friendly model village has begun just days before the 21st edition of the Gorilla naming ceremony, which will take place in Kinigi, Musanze district. Minister of Local Government Habimana Dominique while joining the leadership of the northern and western provinces, said that expanding the park through the construction of the environmentally friendly model village is part of the government's program to protect biodiversity and the environment. The construction of the environmentally friendly model village is expected to provide employment opportunities for 80% of the residents, enabling them to improve their livelihoods. The project has initially begun with the first phase but will be implemented in 2 phases over a period of 10 years. RDB also handed over more than 2 billion Rwandan francs to districts bordering the park, generated from tourism revenues from Volcanoes National Park. Labour experts say the relevant authorities should monitor employment contracts for people working in the informal sector in order to prevent problems, including workers being denied payment by their employers. In the city of Kigali, many people work in various informal jobs, including construction, cleaning, domestic work, and carrying goods. They say some workers are denied their wages, while others do not receive the benefits provided to employees in Rwanda. Experts like Jean Mukunzi reiterate that there are measures that the relevant authorities and job seekers should pay attention to.
In some situations, you find employees who do not have an employment contract. And as a consequence, they are not paid timely, and sometimes they are not paid at all. That was the issue. You have a government authority that is in charge of enforcing the existing laws. And the first level is the labor inspectorate. So labor inspectors, in my opinion, should go to the site where people are working, whether in these kind of informal jobs, and ask where are the contracts. It will be difficult to prove anything you are claiming, such as salary, such as the stability of your employment, and so and so. So the first person to go into the field is the labor inspectorate. But on top of the labor inspectorate, there is the Ministry of Labor and Public Service. I think this is the higher authority to enforce the laws of the Republic. This is a consequence. If you don't have money, you don't have food on the table, you don't have what to pay for your rent. But also other losses, other consequences include like tax evasion. These employers who do not give contract to employees will not pay for that tax called payee. They will not pay for the contribution to the RSSP, the Social Security. So this is a concern, because if you are not you have not that cover of Social Security, what will happen the day you reach my age?
During a media briefing on Monday, President Paul Kagame called on the concerned authorities to address the issue of workers who are not paid as they should be. In February last year, members of the Parliamentary Committee on National Unity, Human Rights and the Fight Against Genocide held discussions with the Minister of Public Service and Labour, expressing concern that 90.3% of Rwandans work in the informal sector, pointing out that makes it difficult for them to improve their livelihoods. The East African Legislative Assembly has begun assessing the rationale for a proposed regional law on seeds and plant varieties. The law is expected to address challenges in the trade and distribution of seeds among the countries of the East African community. The official launch of the process to assess the rationale for the proposed EAC law on seeds and plant varieties was presided over by Teta Gisa, Director General for Africa at Rwanda's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Public participation is an integral part of the EAC legislative process, and these hearings provide an opportunity for stakeholders to examine the proposed legislation, highlight practical challenges, and propose improvement that can strengthen its effectiveness and implementation. The proposed bill seeks to establish a harmonized regional framework for seed production, variety evaluation and registration, certification, quality assurance, marketing, and the movement of seeds across the EAC. It also aims to strengthen cooperation among regulatory authorities, promote innovation in plant breeding, and support investment in the regional seed sector. The views of farmers, seed producers, researchers, regulators, academia, and private sector and civil society are essential to ensuring that the bill responds to the realities and needs of our partner states. I encourage all participants to engage openly and constructively and provide practical recommendations on the provisions of the bill. Your contributions will help enrich the legislative process and ensure that the final legislation is effective, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of the East African community.
In her address to participants at consultative meeting on the proposed law, which brought together government institutions and the private sector, the vice chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, Tourism and Natural Resources at the East African Legislative Assembly, Honorable Kayonga Caroline Rwivanga, said there are gaps in the trade and marketing of seeds among EAC member states. She said the adoption of the law would provide solutions that could enable people in the region to increase agricultural production.
As you know very well, agriculture is the backbone of our economy in Rwanda, but also the whole of East Africa. It's still the backbone. And seeds are the number one input, or one of the essential inputs in agriculture, and quality seeds need to be available in order to increase production. So a lot of work goes into the production of quality seeds, research, the certification of the varieties and plant varieties, and each country has its own processes normally. But this trade or trade between countries with the bills has not been possible because we do not have harmonized laws. Now, Article 106 of the East African Community talks about cooperation in seeds, production, research, and all these elements.
Entrepreneurs who have invested in seed production and trade in Rwanda say the law is very important as it will help them expand their businesses into other countries.
This is very, very good. This seed bill in East African community it's a very good opportunity for business as private operator in this region. Because if you look at the process to get your variety registered in different countries, it was very, very long. And now the seed bill is proposing to shortcut that way. If you have tried, evaluated your seeds in Rwanda for season, those data should be used in the other country. Instead to do 4 seasons in the other country, you will do only 1 season. That will shortcut our process of seed and variety registration in different countries in this community. Second, the interest that you have in this law is that will be for us, it will allow us to move freely in the region. And our product will move freely in the region because the company will be harmonize the process to get to regulate this sector.
The proposed law is being considered at a time when EAC countries are making significant progress in seed production. Rwanda has, for more than 5 years, been saving more than 5 billion Rwandan francs that it previously spent importing improved seeds, particularly for staple crops. Article 59 and 60 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community, together with the Rules of Procedure of the East African Legislative Assembly, provide for the participation of citizens of member states as an important part of the process of developing laws governing the functioning of the community. Such meetings give citizens and various stakeholders an opportunity to scrutinize proposed laws, provide their views, identify potential challenges in their implementation, and make recommendations before the laws are adopted. Moving ahead, the 6th EAC Armed Forces Civil Military Cooperation Week was officially launched on Wednesday in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The event, taking place until Tuesday next week, focuses on medical services, humanitarian assistance, and the renovation of selected health facilities. The Rwanda Defense Force is participating with a contingent of 20 medical personnel led by Brigadier General Dr. Jean Chrysostome Kajimbana. The contingent has joined their fellow from Burundi, Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, and the host country, Tanzania. During the official launch at the Tanzania People's Defense Force Lugalo Golf Club in Dar es Salaam, Lieutenant General Sothman, Chief of Staff at the Tanzania People's Defense Force headquarters, highlighted the objectives of the CIMIC week, including providing free medical services to local communities and strengthening cooperation, interoperability, and unity among EAC partner states. On that note, on behalf of the news production team and the technical team, thank you for sticking with us here on RTV News. My name is Martina Abera, and until next time, stay safe and have a good night.